Hi, I'm Les Unfordorben, CEO of AusPath Agency. Together with my esteemed cousin Frank Unfordorben, our Managing Director, we co-founded AusPath, driven by a pressing need, the shortage of skilled nurses in Australia. In the heart of this challenge, we recognise the urgency to act. The aged care sector in Australia is facing a shortfall of nearly 140,000 workers by 2025, with 30 to 35,000 nurses needed each year, according to CEDA. Through our thorough research and discovery, we found that on the other side of the world, numerous talented international nurses dreamt of contributing to Australia's healthcare. However, the path to AFRA registration was riddled with complexities and barriers, making it impossible for many to consider Australia as a career option. That's where AusPath stepped in. We streamlined the AFRA registration process, offering a faster and cost-effective journey for international nurses. Our transitional pathway not only simplifies AFRA registration, but also navigates the complexities of visa requirements, including DAMA and company-specific labour agreements. This streamlined approach ensures international nurses can start their Australian nursing career without unnecessary delays. Our strategic process helps navigate the complex process all the way through to selecting the most appropriate visa. This helps to ensure longevity and dedication from employees for healthcare organisations, leading to permanent residency for employees and retention for employers. Navigating this process correctly will ensure success, but getting it wrong can lead to a disaster. That's why you need an experienced team that knows the process thoroughly, all the ins and outs. The last thing employers want is to go through the whole recruitment and migration process only to have the employees leave after a short time. We also developed an intuitive online portal that connects nurses with employers, seamlessly making the entire process streamlined and efficient. Our approach isn't just efficient, it's also financially empowering. AusPath optimises the costs associated with AFRA registration, enabling nurses to pursue their dreams without financial burdens. With AusPath, international nurses don't just navigate registration, they embark upon a transformative journey. Our pathway riches careers, ensuring dedicated professionals for employers and fulfilling careers for nurses. Our collaborations with industry leaders like iPass Processing, Lee Care Solutions, Ausmed and Christie Migration ensure a constant supply of the world's most dedicated nurses. These partnerships provide our candidates with the best training, resources and support, making them highly sought after professionals. For employers, compliance is crucial, especially in aged care, where the new 24/7 registered nurses and care minutes requirements demand careful attention. AusPath not only meets these staffing needs, but also tackles compliance obligations head on. Our nurses fulfil all employer requirements, easing the burden on training and ensuring quality care delivery. They seek permanent residency and career advancement, making them valuable long-term assets for any organisation. So join hands with AusPath today and be part of a movement that revolutionises healthcare staffing, enhances patient care, empowers careers and fosters global alliances. So register with AusPath now at www.auspath.agency and transform challenges into opportunities.
Hi everyone, good afternoon to all our live viewers here in AusPath Agency. Welcome to our bi-monthly webinar sessions here in AusPath Agency, where we provide you a lot of information with regards to your pathway to Australia. This is the only platform that provides you discussions, information as to how you can achieve your Australian goal. So I'm Rachel, I'm the host for this webinar, and I'm joined today with Frank Unfordorben, our Managing Director and co-founder of AusPath Agency, and as well as Les Unfordorben, our CEO from AusPath Agency. We're also very blessed to have this opportunity because we have also Will Egan, the CEO of Ausmed, Australia's largest online professional nurse training and CPD points management system. So later on in our discussion, Sir Frank will introduce us, Sir Will, and we are very thankful for the presence of our live viewers here in our information session. So I will be turning you over now to Sir Frank to introduce Will.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been quite a blessing to have Will come in here today, as Rachel said. We often have in all of our webinars that we've had in there, and seen our introductory video, we highlight the fact of our key stakeholder partners, and Ausmed has always been there with AusPath right from the beginning. So we thought it was about time that we bring Sir Will Egan into the mix here to discuss a little bit about who and what is Ausmed, and in particular, the NMBA CPD standard. What's all that about, and how it affects nurses and international nurses especially coming in from the Philippines and all around the world into Australia. Why is it important? What is the CPD framework and how it affects it? So I'll hand you over now to Will Egan, CEO of Ausmed.
Thank you very much, Frank. Well, g'day from myself, and it's a pleasure to be here supporting Frank and Les, and then obviously supporting yourselves on your journeys, in terms of engaging with the Australian healthcare system as a nurse or a carer, or any of the other roles that are critical to the operating of a safe and effective healthcare system here in this country. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the CPD requirement, so continuing professional development requirement of healthcare boards or health registration boards here in Australia. We'll focus particularly on the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia, but if we do have people with a background in paramedicine, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, chiro, allied health, any pharmacy, even general, not doctors or medical practitioners, general practitioners, some of the information I share today will be relevant to those groups of people as well. So let me share my screen, and hopefully you can all see this. Everyone see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Will.
Wonderful. All right. So Ausmed is, as Rochelle mentioned, one of Australia's leading providers of continuing education or continuing professional development. I'll talk more about why that matters shortly. And one of we make a variety of products, but one of the products that we offer is a CPD portfolio. Essentially, it's a documentation or evidence tool, and it's needed as part of a registration with one of our AHPRA boards, Australian Health Practitioners Regulation Agency boards, in particular Nursing Midwifery Board of Australia, which will be the focus of today's talk. What I'm going to do is show you this kind of regulatory infrastructure that exists. So in Australia, there's 2.1 million people working in healthcare. That's quite high for a population of 25 million or thereabouts. But the interesting thing is Australia's healthcare system is quite advanced in its service delivery, and it's quite comprehensive. So, for example, we have programs like the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which provides care to people who have a disability, physical or mental. It kind of intersects with some of our mental health services as well to some extent. But what this means is that we have a disproportionately higher ratio of healthcare workers to the rest of the health workforce. In our country, healthcare represents around 10% of our GDP, yet it probably represents about 13% of overall employment. The other interesting thing about healthcare in Australia is that it's growing at a faster rate than migration or population growth in general. So healthcare's compounding annual growth rate, which just means how much the size of the workforce grows on itself each year compared to the year prior, is around 5.4%, whereas the overall population growth of Australia is around 2%. So healthcare as a sector is growing 2.5 times faster as an employment sector than the rest of the economy. Another interesting perspective when you think about that data point is if 5% of a healthcare workforce is working in health for the first time, that essentially means 1 in 20 of our healthcare workforce is a first-time healthcare employee. And if you span that out to 4 or 5 years, very quickly you get to a point where 25% of Australia's healthcare workforce has less than 5 years experience. Now, they're quite insightful numbers when you think about the role of an organisation like AusPath in supporting people to create migration pathways into employment in Australia. But they also highlight that maybe a little bit scary as well, because they highlight a potential lack of knowledge, skills and competence. Those three things, knowledge, skills and competence, that the workforce may lack knowledge, skills and competence required to provide safe and effective healthcare. Safe and effective healthcare really matters in Australia. Australia's healthcare system ranks #1 overall in the world for outcomes. We rank #3 overall. I think Norway and Finland are two systems that perform better than us. And the areas that they perform is access and equity. Workforce shortages, which is what we're facing now in Australia, are part of the things that are holding us back on an access and equity front. So there really is a need in Australia for people to move to Australia and provide safe and effective healthcare. So as part of that infrastructure, that regulatory infrastructure that exists, Australia has two sets of regulation really, or two classes of regulation. One on the provider, which is the employee, and they are things like accreditation, quality indicators, minimum care minutes, compulsory 24/7 presence of a nurse in an aged care facility, outcome reporting, all of these various requirements that sit on the employer to demonstrate to the government that they are providing safe and effective healthcare. And then we have a second class of regulation which sits on the individual or the health professional or health practitioner. And that's what I'll be talking about today. What is your responsibility as a registered healthcare professional in Australia when it comes to providing safe and effective, safe and quality healthcare to consumers, clients, patients, people, regardless of what the employer is also responsible for. There was a mix-up this morning in the childcare situation, so I might have either a dog or a child walk in at any moment throughout this talk, so please bear with me if that happens. But the organisation that oversees all of the regulation of the health professional is an organisation called AHPRA. It's an agency, so it doesn't regulate the health professional itself, but it establishes a number of boards that do that on their behalf. AHPRA stands for the Australian Health Professional Regulation Agency, or Health Practitioner Regulation Agency. I'm going to click this button here now and show you the boards that it then administers. There's 15 of them, everything from dental to occupational therapy, pharmacy, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health workers, Chinese medicine, and then of course nursing and midwifery and things like paramedicine. There's around 850,000 registered health professionals in Australia. The remaining of, if you go back to that number I mentioned earlier, 2.1 million people working in health, 850,000 are registered health professionals. We think that there's about 200 to 300,000 ancillary staff, so people like CEOs, CFOs, administrative people, HR professionals, admin people who may not be health professionals but are working for a healthcare provider. That gets us to around 1.1 million. And then our view is that around the remaining 900,000 are typically carer roles or social worker roles, or groups of professionals that aren't currently registered or regulated by a national board. Paramedicine, for example, only became a regulated board in 2021, that's my memory of it. But there's still groups like nutritionists, social workers, as I mentioned earlier, that require a university qualification and definitely do extensive study, but are yet to be organised under a national board. AHPRA was formed in 2010. It went live on July 1, 2010. I think it went live with about 6 boards, so it's now at 15. Over time, the number of boards will increase. If you come to Australia and your registration's not, your nursing qualification isn't initially recognised, you may be asked to work as a care worker. You would be a highly qualified care worker, but you would not be required to do CPD. There is no requirement on the care workforce. So we delineate using this language: health professional and healthcare worker. A healthcare worker does not have a national registration, doesn't have a registration number. So I'm going to jump into the Nursing and Midwifery Board now and show you how that works. So the nurses are the biggest group of health professionals in the country. They represent around 420,000 of that 800,000+ I mentioned earlier. And the primary responsibility of a board is to create a register or a list of qualified nurses, qualified health professionals. So the main function of this website is to actually look up a practitioner. I'm going to look up someone who works at Ausmed, Giuseppe. I can type in any registered nurse's name. Maybe I should have typed yours in, Frank. Are you still registered? You're on mute.
No, no longer registered.
You're not registered anymore? No. So we can see here, registered nurse, we have a registration number. We can see if there's any conditions, undertakings, or reprimands against this clinician. We can look at when their registration expires, and we can also, we have a paper record essentially of their qualifications. This is all public information. So if I look up, say, another, let me think, maybe a famous nurse here at in Australia, the head of the College of Nursing, I should be able to, look up practitioner. I might not be able to find her, but as you can see here, every nurse is able to be searched on the register, and that goes the same for every professional group. So what this does is it provides employers with certainty that when someone shows up and says they're a nurse, that they can have confidence that they actually are a nurse because they've attained a minimum level of education sufficient to become a nurse. One of the main, the second functions of the board is to define what it means to be a nurse. And the way that we talk about that is what's called standards of practice. So I'm going to, there's a lot of information on these websites. Let me just search for it quickly. I'll go to the midwife standards of practice. Sorry, what this basically is a outline. Sorry about that. What this is an outline of all of the things that a midwife or a nurse or any other health professional is expected to do. So we can see these standard statements here. Promotes health and well-being through evidence-based midwifery practice. Standard 2, engages in professional relationships and respectful partnerships. Underneath each standard, we have a list of domains, and these domains outline some of the expectations that, or all of the expectations that an employer should have of that professional. In this case, a midwife. That's another way of saying that it gives certainty to the employer that not only are we confirming this person is a nurse and that they have met a minimum level of education, but we are also acting as a control function on this professional to make sure they uphold the standards of practice to continue to maintain their registration as a nurse, or in this case, a midwife. You can see the registered nurse standards here. But that's not all. So the last and component of the board is actually maintaining registration and a set of standards that sit around that. So there's typically 4 standards. You can see these up here under the requirements for registration. The first is a criminal history check, so a police check. The second is an English language skills check. The third is continuing professional development. The fourth is recency of practice. I said fourth, there's actually 5. There's also a professional indemnity insurance requirement. There's different organizations that solve different parts of this problem, but probably the most onerous component is the continuing professional development requirement for practice, which I'm clicking into now. So every single board will have a registration standard around CPD, or continuing professional development. If you've worked in the US, this is the equivalent of continuing education, CE, or continuing nurse education, CNE, or continuing education units, CEUs, if you're familiar with those terms. I'm going to open up this standard and show you how it works. Give me 1 second. Can you see the document on my screen? Yep. Okay, so these documents aren't difficult to read. This one's only 4 pages. The first part explains what the requirement is and who it applies to. So you can see here, I'm going to use the example of registered nurses. Registered nurses in Australia are required to complete and document 20 hours of education a year. And if they have a endorsement of a scheduled medications endorsement, which is currently the only endorsement that is offered to registered nurses, they need to do an additional 10 hours. So the total number of CPD hours that this professional needs to do is 30 hours a year. Now that's quite low relative to other professional groups. Medical practitioners, for example, might in some cases need to do up to 60 hours. But most nurses on average are required to do 20 hours. The same goes for midwives. I know that's not focus here. Midwives, 20 hours, and if they have an endorsement, my understanding is largely there's only a medications endorsement for midwifery as well. Yep, scheduled medicines endorsement, there's an additional 10 hours. So that gives you a bit of a sense as to what you're required to do, 20 hours of education. Depending on the time of year that you're registered, there may also be an option to do prorated amounts of CPD. So, for example, if your registration happens with 3 months of the registration year to go, you may only need to do 5 hours of CPD, 1 quarter. So it's done on a pro-rata quarterly basis. Everybody in the country has their registration renewal at the same time. For nursing, that's the 31st of May. But for other professions like paramedicine, for example, my understanding is that it's the 30th of September. So by the 31st of May every year, you'll need to have completed at least 20 hours of education and have evidence to demonstrate that. Ausmed provides solutions like this to over 400,000 health professionals and healthcare workers in the country. And what we see is an average that's well above 20 hours, somewhere between 35 and 40. So 20 hours is should be seen as like getting 50% on an exam. You've just passed, but you're not necessarily excelling. You're at the point where, well, if you did 1 minute less, maybe you wouldn't pass an audit. In terms of these comments over here on the right, at renewal of registration, you're required to declare that you've complied with this standard. So that's a legal declaration. But you're not required to upload evidence of that. The evidence is only supplied in the event of an audit. And our estimations, because the NMBA doesn't publish the audit framework, is that somewhere between 3 and 5% of practitioners are audited per year. But when they are audited, they can be asked to provide up to 5 years of evidence. So it's usually not just for the prior 1 year. The audits have a longer duration. In terms of evidence, we're going to get to that shortly, but essentially it's documentation, maintaining records and keeping a copy of those in a portfolio, a personal portfolio. I'm going to skip ahead. The last component of the documentation, let me just see if I can find it, is to maintain a learning plan and a set of goals that sits inside your scope of practice. I'll just talk to this verbally. So it follows the plan, do, document, reflect cycle, which is kind of like the continuous improvement cycle. Write a learning plan based on internal and external feedback or reviews, for example, a performance review. Identify specific learning goals. Identify activities and then complete those educational activities. That's the do stage. Reflect on the benefit of those educational activities to your practice, And then step 4, evaluate. How is that education going to lead to a change in care for your clients or consumers? Education sits at the heart of maintaining a quality healthcare system. All of the evidence all around the world shows that ongoing education improves the performance of a professional or an individual. In the context of healthcare, education does lead to an improvement in health outcomes, and it does lead to an improvement in the confidence and the capability of the healthcare professional or worker. And it certainly reduces things like burnout or stress or all of the other emotions that come from when you provide care in an inadequate way, or that you're concerned that maybe you've done the wrong thing. So that's why in Australia, we regulate for the need for education. My understanding is that it's the same in the Philippines as well. There's probably, in the US, it's half of the states have the requirement, but in other Commonwealth-derived healthcare systems, like the United Kingdom or Canada, these requirements are ubiquitous, so they apply to everyone there as well. So now I'm going to show you how Ausmed can help. So now that you know that there's a regulatory requirement to maintain a personal portfolio, that's where this product of Ausmed's free CPD, Continuing Professional Development app, comes to the fore. So the problem that this app helps you do is meet those 2 requirements. It helps you write a learning plan, state your context of practice, and identify specific learning goals. If you'd like to scan that QR code, it'll take you to a web page that lets you download the app. The app's free to use. Just going to open it myself, make sure it still works. So this takes you to a link to download the registration standard, which is what I just had on my screen, that document behind us. So if you want to have a look at the Nursing and Midwifery Board's guidelines around CPD, scan that QR code. It'll take you there and you can have a look at it yourselves. The second thing that it helps you do is collect and provide evidence of that education and the reflections associated with them. So this is the app. This is the QR code that will help you download the app. So if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to, let's see, where did that one take me?
So this is taking us to Continuing Professional Development page.
To the same one as well. All right, let me just check. Maybe scan that one. Let me see.
That's
no, they're all the same. They're all the same. Okay, so
in the chat anyway. So for everyone,
link?
they want to click on the link.
Yeah, I'll just make sure that's the right link. Right. Yep, and I might just put the link in for the Ausmed app download. The app's the easiest way to do it. Give me 1 sec. I don't think I can comment. Is that right?
That still goes to the Nursing Midwifery Board page.
Yeah, so Frank or Les, or Rochelle, I've just pasted a link to ausmed.com.au/download in the private chat. If you could share that with everyone, that'd be greatly appreciated, please. Okay, so yeah, this app is the way to do it. So it's free. It'll outline to you all of the requirements of the Nursing Midwifery Board of Australia. And then it provides, if you click on this little pink plus button, an easy way to document new evidence. It's very easy to use app. And you can see at the top right corner here, this download report button. If you're audited, you just tap that. Within about 10 seconds, you'll have a full report ready for that audit. It also includes a variety of educational resources. In Australia, a lot of people purchase an annual subscription to access these. It's a library of around 1,200 resources. That costs around $399 Australian dollars per year. Sorry about the dog. But we also have quite a number of free resources, which I'll demonstrate to you shortly. There's a lot of ways to get free CPD. And then just like everything with education or everything in life, there's free can be of varying quality. You might decide you'd like to pay for a subscription, in which case you can access some premium solutions as well.
One of the benefits of AusPath is that we do have the Platinum package. So for those people that were here last week and saw our webinar on the Platinum package there, people can know that they have a myriad of benefits for only 4,999 pesos. So that's worth about $137 Australian. One of the benefits of being an AusPath member and upgrading to the Platinum package is that Will has kindly allowed all of our AusPath members on the Platinum package to have 1 year's access. So you get that benefit of $400 access immediately by being a Platinum member. So that 137 is well and truly paid for. Obviously, there's the other benefits that go with that, such as your CV and resume review, your interview coaching, as well as discounts through other stakeholder partners.
Thanks, Frank. Yeah, that's a very good benefit. Considering the subscription typically costs $3.99 for a year, you're getting that added into the Platinum package, which itself in total sounds like it only costs 150 Aussie dollars a year. A good deal. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen again and show you how this works on the Ausmed website. So some of you will have downloaded the app already. You can use the same login details that you create to access the information you put in the app on our website as well, ausmed.com.au or ausmed.com. This works across the UK and the US as well, so .co.uk, and then obviously .com, and New Zealand.co.nz. So I'm going to go to the portfolio tab, and I'm going to show you a current summary of the current CPD year. So I told you it finishes on May 31st, and I have 10 days left to complete the 20 hours that are required of me. You can also see here that I've got a number of activities that I've completed on Ausmed which require my reflections, and then I can go in and look at prior years' learning as well. So I'm going to jump into the current year and show you that summary. So I have a summary for a registered nurse here, 20 hours that I need to do, and I've done 6 hours and 46 minutes. You can see it's giving me prompts to add my context of practice and also set learning goals, which I've already done. And it's also telling me I need to complete the CPD hours in order to meet the overall requirement. Over on the left here, I've got my learning plan where I can add my context of practice. This is a very straightforward tool. Once you fill it all in, it provides you with a sentence or a statement which describes that. And then I've got my learning goals sitting down here. You can also see that I can view the activities that are linked to this learning goal. So I can demonstrate how I'm updating my knowledge on cardiac care, etc. And then I've got CPD activities, all of the activities that I've done, and then I can also provide an audit report as well. So this audit report is designed to meet the needs of APRA in all of their kind of complexity. But when I click download report, it'll give it to me as a PDF, and that's that there. Okay, so the last little thing, I didn't share my screen on that one, so give me 1 sec. CPD report, there we go. If I scroll through this, it shows me all the documented activities. Right. Has anybody got any questions at this stage?
Yeah, well, just in regards to the CPD report there, how can an individual share that with their employer?
Okay, so great question. Obviously, they can send it to them as a PDF and attach it to their resume. Another option that they have is that they can actually, through a product called the Passport, provide a public link to their employer to demonstrate completion of common mandatory training items. So once you go through some of the, if you're doing education on Ausmed, once you go through those modules, we'll total all that up for you into a certificate. I should actually earn my certificate. I've still got 8 items I need to complete. Once I've done those, I would have a portable PDF that I can send as well as a link, and I can get a badge that I can put on my LinkedIn. It's a good question.
Another question as well,
yeah.
Will. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting to share the tab. So this is the passport tab. So I was in portfolio. I've switched across to passport. You can see the list of the activities here. And once I finish those, the system will generate me a link, a badge for LinkedIn, and a PDF that I could share, another way to share. But as I said, most people do just send this document to their employer as part of their employment application. It's essentially an attachment.
Is there a capacity for that to feed back to AFRO for the requirements of CPD? How is it tracked and how is it accrued then yearly?
So the onus sits, it's a good question. In Australia, the onus sits with the individual to maintain the evidence of what they're reporting to the government. Our government's process on a lot of fronts is not to collect the evidence at the point of registration or renewal. For example, when you lodge a tax return, they give you a format to lodge the information in. You're not required to provide receipts at that point in time. The way that the government in Australia operates is that it'll conduct audits. They're random, they're unannounced. And at that point of audit, you'll be required to provide evidence that backs up the claims that you've made. So people can be 20 years in their profession and have never been audited.
Yeah. One of the really interesting things that I just picked up on when you were actually showing the government document there, or the AFRA document, I should say, was a requirement for staff right there where you are there at the top right-hand corner. That's it there. That nurses and midwives who are on leave from work, say maternity leave, still have an obligation for continuing professional development to keep an up to date with with their professional development. So that just goes into play as well. Yes, you may not be audited for 20 years, but just because you're on maternity leave, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep up to date.
Yeah. Or other leaves of absence from work as well.
Or work cover, everything there too. Yeah.
Everything that can go on, So really, that all stems from that core belief, which is education improves care, and that we all have a responsibility to do it. An employer will assign mandatory training to a staff member, but as far as the government's concerned, in order to call yourself a nurse or a paramedic or a pharmacist, you're required to engage in ongoing education. And in Australia, that's not just a requirement in health. That's a requirement across law, tax, engineering, lots and lots of other disciplines.
Electrical, plumbing, trades.
Absolutely. Requirement across the board. Yeah. So, but the government isn't in the business of collecting millions and millions of PDFs from everybody every year. Rather, they would prefer to just randomly audit and require people to give evidence at the point of an audit.
Well, I also have another question. You mentioned earlier about Philippines and as well as the USA, because in the Philippines, it was actually initiated by the Philippine Regulation Commission, wherein nurses are required to have 15 units of CPD. And in the USA, for each of the state, they will be required for a certain CEUs. They call it, as you mentioned. How about in Australia? Is there a certain specific topic, like for example, wound dressing or infection control, that a nurse has to submit, or is just a random any topic that you can comply as long as it will be 20 hours?
Yes, exactly. So in the US, for example, in the state of Massachusetts, there's a specific requirement around dementia care. And that was because the government's view was that there was inadequate care being provided in that. Other examples throughout the US might be you have to do 20 hours and at least 2 of those hours have to be on active shooter related training. So how to lock the hospital down in the event that someone's walking around the hospital with a gun. You'll be pleased to know we don't have those issues in Australia, but those specific topics, whilst that's part of the model in the US, we don't really have that in Australia. Anything that's around specificity, a specific topic, sits with the employer, not with the individual. So in the quality frameworks that sit across the acute care sector or the aged care sector or the NDIS sector or other groups, there are references to specific education topics. For example, in the aged care standards, there's around 143 specific references to skills, knowledge, or competence that the employer must make sure their workforce has. But in the NMBA registration standard, rather than referencing a specific topic, they simply say that it must relate to your context of practice. I'll just try and find that.
So
language.
obviously, a lot of what we're doing with our...
How is relating to your context of practice. So it's up to, sorry, Frank, to interrupt you, but it's up to the individual to choose the activities that they think will benefit themselves and their patients based on the context of practice that they work in. If maybe it would help, Frank, if I use the context of practice, a context of practice tool to help show people what a context of practice is.
Oh, please.
Yeah. All right. So I'll jump back to the portfolio. You'll notice I'm in this current year. It's telling me to describe, or to add my context of practice.
We're still seeing the standard. Yep, there we go. Yep.
So I'm back in the portfolio. Over here on the right, I have this prompt, add context of practice, describe where you work, your main role and population of the people you work with. You must engage in CPD activities and set your learning goals based on your context of practice. So this is how you think about your context of practice. What's the setting that you work in? So I'm going to pick home care as an example. Where do you work? In a capital city or maybe I'm in a small rural centre. What are your areas of expertise? Aged care, maybe it's aesthetic medicine, and maybe it's wound management, and maybe it's pressure injury prevention. Okay, so these are the things that I do on a regular basis. What's the group of people that I primarily work with? In this case, it's older people. So I'm working in an aged care setting. What's the primary focus of my day-to-day activities? It's effectively care coordination. That's what I'm doing as a nurse. What's the complexity of the people that I provide care to? Let's say they're generally complex. They're not highly complex though. This isn't an ICU environment or an emergency department. How much autonomy do I have in my practice? I have high degrees of autonomy. I'm essentially running the show let's say this is a residential care facility. And how do I collaborate with how often do I collaborate with other health professionals? Pretty much always. When did I start working in this setting? Maybe it was at the start of this month. So what our system then does is show you, I've said this is home care, but show you an example statement of a context of practice. So if someone said to me, what's your context of practice? I would say, I work in a home care setting located in a small rural centre. My area of specialty is aged care, aesthetic medicine, wound management, pressure injury prevention, and I primarily work with older people. In my role, I focus on care coordination and consider my scope of practice to be generally complex. Professionally speaking, I have a high amount of autonomy and I always have opportunities to collaborate with other health professionals. And I could change language like this and add things in, Bendigo, regional Victoria, and I save that. And that's a context of practice. Now, based on this context of practice, you need to find education that meets these needs. That's the role. So the government doesn't stipulate what topics you need to learn on. They ask you to think about what's your context of practice and what are the educational gaps that you have with respect to that context of practice. I'm going to jump over to the learning section now and show you how that could be used. So I'm going to show you a few things. First is this CPD packages tool. This is a way to find those activities. I might say I have 5 hours of CPD that I need to earn. I want it to be in the areas of aged care, dementia, and wound management. So I've picked 3 topics. I'm going to pick some keywords that I'm looking for. So wound care, wound management, infection prevention and control, and loss and grief, and maybe something around dermatology as well. Click continue. Our system will go away and find education across 2,500 resources that we think will be relevant to you and put them into a package for you. So this is that process of using your context of practice to find education that relates to the type of care that you're providing on a regular basis. Once you find these, you can confirm that, and they actually all go straight into your learning plan. So you'll see down here, find these resources in your plan CPD. I'll click back to there, and here's my learning plan. These are all the items that I've said I want to do for this CPD year. The second thing I just want to show you is the free education. So this section, articles, is all free. There's a lot of great content in here. It's all micro learning, lots and lots of different topics. So if you want to understand things about the Australian healthcare system, just come in here, browse through it, or also you can click search. You can do a search. What's your favorite topic, Frank?
Let's look for chemical restraint.
All right. I've just done a search for that, and straight away you can see I've got content from Ausmed. We also refer to that as restrictive practices in aged care, and I've also got something coming from a government department, which is alternative therapies to chemical restraint. So that's how that essentially works. I click into this, and then straight away I can go through and understand that concept, including videos, diagrams, and there's also a quiz, an assessment tool at the end that you can do. And the last thing I want to show you is content partners. So Ausmed has partnerships with a number of government Department of Health and Aged Care agencies and a number of independent publishers. One I want to bring your attention to in particular is Dementia Training Australia. Dementia Training Australia is a really significant resource. It offers a lot of education across many topics that relate to dementia care. Dementia care is a priority area in Australia at the moment. And you can navigate from Ausmed to all of these resources and complete the education on their website, and then come back to Ausmed and create a record documentation of that. So yeah, Ausmed really does have all of the tools that you need to create a portfolio of evidence for your registration, and then it has an extensive library of educational resources that you can access to complete that those CPD hours as well.
We can see that it's very convenient for nurses, if they're on a break or, say they're in a quiet period during night shift or something like that. And they're wondering, how am I going to do a big block of CPD points? Well, this breaks it up quite easily for them. They can do 10 minutes here, 9 minutes here, 12 minutes here. Very soon, those hours are, going to add up. And at the same time, they're providing and learning quality care.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the really fascinating topics like pressure injuries, these require a subscription. But if I go into this one, this resource was published on the 9th of May. It's been extremely popular. It's getting 4.7 stars from over 700 reviews already. There'd be thousands of people who would have already completed this in just 2 or 3 weeks. When you do a course like this is an example of a paid course. Here's what the interface looks like. I'll just, you can see my learning path on the right, and then we have video education as well. One other thing I'll actually just show you, which I think's quite relevant here, is I'll go into one of these resources, Aged Care Quality Standards, and we actually offer closed caption transcripts on top of an increasing number of videos, so that you can listen to the English also have
Unit
the
1.
native language
Introduction.
subtitles running in the background, on the screen, as you can see
Hello
there.
and welcome to this Ausmed training module.
That's helpful as well. Does anyone have any questions? That's the end of my official presentation.
I was just going to ask you, Will, just in regards to one of the promotions that we were doing in conjunction with AusPath there, and which you launched, I think it was last year or the year before, was the aged care passport.
Yeah.
And how popular that's been as available to everyone, and that was a free initiative through to the Australian healthcare industry, especially to aged care. And what that looks like, and how did that come into being? Because it's been absolutely fantastic to see people in the industry. Obviously, AusPath has a lot to do with aged care in conjunction with We Care, our partner. But the feedback that we've got has been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. So because of those quality frameworks, if you go back to that regulation that I said sits on the healthcare employer, one of those regulatory devices is a quality framework and essentially a standards framework. And in those standards, there's an implication or implied common training requirement across a sector. And what this does is it means that all employers end up teaching the same 10 or 20 topics. But a lot of people who work in these sectors move between employers, and they may also work for more than one employer at any one time. So what we did was we have created a way for you to carry evidence of your mandatory training from one employer to the next. And that's what the passport provides for. This means that you can be fast-tracked through induction because you don't have to repeat those mandatory training items. And it also saves you time, obviously, but it means that the time that's freed up can be focused on education that is novel, is new, something you may not have known, rather than just repeating our educational investment into topics that are already common. And that's the role of the passport. So a lot of employers recognize the passport. And when you acquire the passport, let me just show you this. When you earn the passport credential, you can carry that with you between different to different employers. Let me just show you a list of the ones that already recognize it. So that's this list here. So if you've got this passport, they'll recognize this mandatory training as well. Some of these organizations may be the ones that AusPath is promoting or putting placement.
Several of our employers are quite happy to see that a candidate that we put forward to them actually has an Ausmed Aged Care passport.
Yeah.
It's well known amongst the employers. So for you to be able to go on to the Ausmed page, and you can access it via the AusPath pages as well. Click in there and actually do this aged care passport for free.
That's free. Yeah, I'd recommend everyone doing it.
Absolutely, because it's just going to propel you to the front.
It's a free credential.
The front list, yeah.
That's recognized by employers. So if I go back to say, like maybe a rock pool, often what will happen is you will, I'll just share this tab. You'll visit an employer website and they'll actually list the Ausmed passport as something that they recognize. We recognize the Ausmed passport, and that's what this is referring to. The main job site in Australia is a site called Seek. If you search Ausmed in here, you'll see just how many jobs recognize, 33 jobs at the moment currently recognizing the Ausmed passport. Skip over our 2 jobs, but you can see groups like Rockpool, Infinite Care saying, oh, if you've got the Ausmed passport, please apply for us. I'll say it somewhere in here. Infinite Care accepts the Ausmed passport. Yeah.
So really, really popular with those employers. They understand the benefit of the Ausmed passport, and again, really, really encourage everyone to go to do that. It is free, as I said. You can access Ausmed directly via the AusPath website or directly at ausmed.com.au.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Any
Will, with
other
the
questions?
amazing platform that your company is providing to the healthcare professionals, there should be no reason that they cannot comply with the CPDs. But just curious to know, what happens to the license of the nurse if ever that he or she cannot comply with the 20-hour CPD units that is required?
Okay, so when you renew your registration, it's not an option to say you haven't done it, essentially. So if you wanted to renew your registration and you haven't done it, you would essentially have to lie in order to fill that form in on their website. Now, that's obviously a bad situation to be in. The risk is therefore that you would be audited and you'd be asked to provide evidence. And nurses are the number one most trusted profession in Australia. I don't think the board would accept, a response of, I hadn't done it, but I wanted to get my registration, so I said I did. I think what would happen is, in practice, you would not be able to re-register and until you had completed them. That's the ethical and honourable thing to do. So
you certainly wouldn't want to have a black mark against your name in healthcare. It, as we said, it is a trust thing, but then again, it also goes back to your profession, your vocation, and the care that you're giving. So, look after yourself first before you're going in there to look after care for others. Make sure that you are about what you are doing and you actually understand the healthcare requirements.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it is a public register, as I showed you at the start, and you'll notice there were 3 categories of, remarks, I think essentially like a citation and a notation. And if you're found to fail an audit, there may be a risk that sits on your name permanently on that register, essentially. So that's the point of the register. It's to keep a public record of how that professional is performing in their duties. So, yeah, if you're audited, the government will put, the regulatory body, the board will put you on a remedial pathway. They will create quite an onerous, maybe at 60 hours, and then they will meet with you on a regular basis so that you can demonstrate progress towards that remediation. And once they're satisfied that you've met the requirement, remedied the error, they would then remove the notation or citation against your name.
So where's the thing?
It'd be quite stressful.
So the worst thing is just you cannot renew as a nurse. You cannot renew your license as long as you haven't provided yet the 20 hours of CPD units. Will, thank you so much for sharing that information. The platform is really amazing. I even have tried it myself just to see what Ausmed is offering, and it's really amazing. So on my point of view, salute to all of you, to the entire team of AusMed who made this all possible, and especially to your mom, who is the founder of Ausmed.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the efforts that you are putting in.
That's right. And actually, Makati City Hospital, we've done some stuff with them over the few years back as well. And Ausmed's an ANCC, American Nursing Credentialing Center, Commission on Accreditation, ANCC, accredited education provider. We've got a lot of respect for the wonderful work that Filipino nurses do, both in the Philippines, and then they really are the backbone of our nursing workforce here in Australia. So there's a lot of respect that is shown towards. As I just showed you, we include subtitles in Tagalog on our videos, to support people to rapidly upskill, so that they feel comfortable and supported when they're here in Australia. I think something like 10% of our staff are Filipino at Ausmed. So yeah, if you do make your way over to Australia, I hope you love it, and I hope you feel the appreciation that we as a society all have for the contribution that new people make when they migrate to Australia. In the city that I'm from, Melbourne, around 1 in 3 people living in Melbourne are first-generation migrants from Asia alone. It's about 38% were born in Asia and living in Melbourne. So we're a very multicultural society, and we really rely on programs like what AusPath offer to support our country to grow. And in exchange for that, we try and provide a good quality of life, like working from home and having dogs barking and kids running in and out of the room while you're trying to do work. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for your appreciation, Will. So, Frank, with the partnership of Ausmed and AusPath, what can AusPath provide to the candidates?
Okay, so AusPath has, through the generous offer of Will with Ausmed, so obviously every member of AusPath and every member in Australia that goes to Ausmed's website does have access to the aged care passport. But again, for all AusPath agency Platinum Healthcare professionals, those members of AusPath that upgrade to the Platinum package, they're going to get 1 complete year's free access to the full suite of Ausmed online learning modules. So again, that's worth over $400. So, well in excess of the actual cost of upgrading to the Platinum package. So by all means, if you're thinking of, joining to be part of Ausmed, go through the AusPath website, join up as a member under AusPath. International sponsorships are available now. We have several employers all looking for experienced, credentialed nurses and carers, as well as allied health professionals and skilled workers. So please go to AusPath, go to our main website, www.auspath.agency, join our CRM portal, crm.auspath.agency, and be reminded that going and joining onto our portal is a personal advertisement for you to Australian employers. And joining the Platinum package just helps to propel you to the front of the list. So you'll actually get the benefits of, as we said, CV and resume auditing and rewriting, video profiles, interview coaching, as well as all the different stakeholder partners of AusPath discounts and benefits, including the main one here being Ausmed's 1 year free access to the full suite of Ausmed online learning modules for your CPD.
Thank you, Frank, for that information. And I'd like to thank again, Will, for your presence today. You have shared so much valuable information to our audience. And we really thank you for all the efforts that you're putting in together with your team to create Ausmed, an amazing platform for our healthcare providers. So don't forget, guys, to download the Ausmed platform. You have it here. You can visit www.ausmed.com.au at / download, so that you can also get started on learning, even learning for free, coming from Ausmed topics that you need. Reminders to all our medical professionals, healthcare professionals who want to go to Australia, definitely your continuing professional development units is a requirement. So if you need one, you can definitely get it through Ausmed. Any last words, Will, to our audience?
No, thank you very much, and all the best, and thanks to Frank and Les for the opportunity, and thanks to you, Rachel, for hosting us.
Thank you, Will. How about Frank?
Thanks again, Will, for your support. Ongoing support has been invaluable, and we really treasure it. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Cheers.
Thanks,
everybody.
Viewers. Thank you, everyone, for your presence, and thank you for your time. We look forward to seeing you again after 2 weeks on our next session. Bye for now. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. Bye.